Hi, welcome to the Interaxis channel, interaxis.io. So today we're going to talk, and for many videos, we're going to talk about real-world assets. And I've been talking about these for a while in various Twitter threads or various articles or blog posts, because I think what so-called real-world assets, RWA, are what is going to bring so much money, so many assets, and so much use to blockchains, whether they're Ethereum, whether they're Solana, Avalanche, Layer 2s, Bitcoin, whatever it might be. But so-called real world assets, I think, are going to bring so many use cases and so much adoption. And in many instances, you won't even realize that things are happening on a blockchain. It will just be in the background. But first, we have to talk about what real world assets even are, what we even mean by that, because different people talking about it mean different things. Some people, it means something like security tokens or real estate. Sometimes it means income. Sometimes it means credit. Sometimes it means a public company that just their stock is represented on chain, something like that. So I'll talk a little bit about what it means to me, because and several of those kind of definitions, several of the instances of what people are talking about when they discuss so-called real world assets. But really what it is, what real world assets comes down to when we start talking about it in the crypto sense and the blockchain DeFi sense is, how do we merge the ideas of on-chain versus off-chain? And then you might go, well, Adam, what do you mean by on-chain versus off-chain? Well, an on-chain asset, in my view, an on-chain or a crypto asset would be something like Bitcoin or ETH. And what do I mean by that? These Bitcoin and ETH are entirely created and entirely necessary to blockchains, right? Bitcoin started it all. And what Bitcoin does is Bitcoin is the incentive mechanism. It is created completely out of thin air digitally, but it is because miners are processing transactions in a decentralized way, right? So all of these miners, and I know this is going back to some technical discussion of Bitcoin, but all these miners all over the world are processing transactions. All these computers are processing transactions because we don't necessarily want a bank or a government or some sort of entity to do it. We need it to be decentralized. And the incentive mechanism we're giving them is Bitcoin. If you all will process these transactions, whoever wins the right to process a block gets a Bitcoin as your incentive mechanism. And of course, we know about the 21 million Bitcoin and all of those parts about Bitcoin. On Ethereum, it's a little bit different. Two things. I need ETH. It becomes gas in order to make transactions work. And now we're using it to stake to do the same thing, to process transactions. I'm staking ETH in an effort to process transactions. But remember, these are on-chain assets. They are created in order to make these chains, the Bitcoin chain and the Ethereum chain, in order to make them go forward, we need Bitcoin and we need ETH. They're completely designed to make these public blockchains work. You also might have assets like Aave or Maker, MKR. Aave is a lending protocol. Maker is the protocol that creates DAI, the stablecoin DAI, and also is somewhat of a lending protocol now. But these are pretty much what I would call on-chain assets as well. They represent on-chain lending. They represent decentralized finance protocols, and so they're kind of on-chain. So these are not what I would consider real-world assets: Aave, Maker, Bitcoin, ETH. So we start to get into off-chain or real-world assets. That's when we start talking about things like, for instance, real estate, which we will talk about so many of these things. But there might be a token that represents some piece of real estate. And we use token not to be a volatile crypto token, but this is just something that represents this asset over here. And what we're having to do, because we have this, we'll call it the Ethereum blockchain to make things simple. We have the Ethereum blockchain where we use ETH to process blocks, where we might have Aave and Maker with lending and creating stable coins. All these things happen inside this blockchain, and we go, okay, we have this piece of real estate, like the building that I'm in right now. It might be some other asset like a car. It might be a private business, whatever it is. But I want to get the value. I want to get the representation of that particular asset potentially onto this chain such that now maybe I can use it to interact with Aave or to interact with Maker or to be able to send that token somewhere. And I'm going to use Ethereum in this case as essentially a database to track the ownership, right? So this token is represented in this database. And when I do something like connect to my wallet, and currently my wallet controls this token, that's how we show ownership. And once we do that, now we can open up all these efficiencies. So when we start talking about real world assets, bringing real world assets on chain, we're talking about some people talk about tokenization. We're talking about creating tokens that represent real estate, tokens that represent private companies, tokens that maybe represent some sort of credit or debt, tokens that represent treasuries, for instance. Tokens that we've already seen, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, but there will be tokens that represent works of art, things that you can invest in. They can represent income streams, all sorts of assets like this, assets like that, or income streams that you can bring onto, in this case, the Ethereum blockchain. Again, it could be Avalanche, it could be Solana. We could see it working with Bitcoin, however it might be. But you want to bring it on chain such that now you can interact in a different way. Now you can get some of those benefits that we see with crypto and with DeFi. And what are some of those benefits? Some of those benefits are the wallet, right? Because now we have the benefit of self-custody. This is one of the great parts that Bitcoin originally gave us, that crypto, that Ethereum, that everything is kept up with. Self-custody. I can now hold this asset in my wallet. Therefore, I have ownership. I have control over it. And I don't have to go through a centralized custodian. I don't have to go through some custodian to do that. I can now hold it and own it by virtue of the fact that it sits in my wallet. So you get this idea of self-custody. You get the idea in some of these instances of real-world assets of liquidity, right? There might be the opportunity, because of the self-custody feature, there might be the opportunity that I can sell this asset to someone else in a more efficient manner than we see today. And this is what a lot of BlackRock and JP Morgan are talking about. BCG, Boston Consulting Group, Citi have said there's going to be so much tokenization. They've said anywhere from $4 trillion to $40 trillion worth of tokenized assets, real world assets on chain, whatever you want to say. And part of that is the efficiency. I can custody it myself. I get greater efficiencies because I can now exchange from one wallet to another, maybe through a marketplace, but I can exchange them and the settlement is immediate. We can exchange maybe USDC or DAI for this token or for part of this token, and therefore, and we have it settled immediately, meaning it moves from my wallet to someone else's wallet. And now we've settled that transaction. It gives me liquidity for something that was previously an illiquid asset. Once we have that liquidity, and I'll write that here because that's one of the main parts of this. Once I have that liquidity, now what I potentially have is the ability to use it as collateral. So now maybe this private investment, in the past, I wasn't able to use as collateral. Now maybe I can, and I might use it as collateral for a loan. And you go, well, isn't that risky? Well, if I own real estate, I mean, look, I borrow against my home, right? That's what a mortgage is. If I own assets that can be valued, like real estate, if I own assets like private companies that can be valued, why shouldn't I be able to get a loan against those? Of course, I'm not going to use it as a degen. I'm not going to use it to go invest in other risky assets. But that's what wealthy people have done for a long time. That's what businesses have done for a long time. I take my assets and I'm able to get a loan against them and go make good business decisions, efficient business decisions. If I've invested in private real estate, private companies, if I have income streams coming in, why shouldn't I be able to borrow against those, to use those as collateral? And because they're tokens, because they're represented by smart contracts, I can encode certain parts like the collateralization ratio, the payback time, all of those things I can encode into these smart contracts. So it's not completely being a degenerate gambler or something with these tokens. It's utilizing it to get more efficiency out of my investments and honestly to get more efficiency so that I can use my money for my life. What if I have all these assets and I need some cash to go, pay for my daughter's wedding, to go pay for a new car, to go pay for something that I really need, instead of having to sell assets, which brings the value down, maybe I go borrow against them. And wouldn't it be good to borrow against an appreciated piece of real estate rather than going to sell, Apple stock or something in order to pay for something. That would be efficient. So this is where we're going to see, we're talking about real world assets, again, assets that are, or investments that are essentially, again, real world. They are buildings, they're private companies, they are debt, they are something that is not 100% generated on chain, coming into the Ethereum or Avalanche or some sort of decentralized finance ecosystem, such that now I can use that token to be part of the database. I can use it for greater efficiency. I can custody it myself. I can use it to get greater liquidity. I can use it as collateral now to get a loan. That's essentially what we're talking about when we start talking about real world assets. So I'm going to go into several videos and several talking points discussing what some of those real world assets might be. I've discussed a few of them already, how people might be using them, why we might see the move towards this blockchain-based tracking of assets, why we might see greater efficiency, what maybe some of those use cases are, and then what some of the tools are that we might need in order to actually make this work. So I hope you enjoyed this string of videos, this playlist of videos all about bringing real world assets on chain.